Welcome to the Programming Alliance podcast. Today we have Priya Patel on the show. We linked up with her at AmFest, and it was a great discussion. She is currently the head of strategic partnerships at Azoria, which is an investment firm committed to free thinking, excellence, and meritocracy. She's also a young patriot, political activist, and strives to affect change in these youth generations. So we're going to cover non-woke investing, culture wars, modern women, and much more. So let's get into it. Priya Patel is with us on the Programming Alliance podcast. We're excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time. And as we get started, for the audience's benefit, could you give us a little bit about your background and what you do for Azoria?
Absolutely. So Azoria is a brand new investment firm that we launched a few weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago, and we're launching our first ETF in March of 2025. And essentially what we're going to be doing is taking all the companies in the S&P 500, but excluding all the ones that hire based off of woke DEI hiring and promotion policies. So we're really excited to launch that and give Americans an alternative to the S&P and see really, really good returns on their investments. We expect that we're going to be outperforming the S&P.
Yeah.
But as far as my background goes and my position at Azoria, I'm head of strategic partnerships at Azoria. So I take care of a lot of the communications and whatnot. But yeah, I actually graduated a few weeks ago from ASU online as a political science major.
Amazing. I think as we invest, and there's a lot of people that think about this, like how do we get our money so it's not in the hands of the BlackRocks and Vanguards and the companies that are doing things that seemingly hate us, and get it into the hands of companies that are really looking out for their investors' best interest.
Absolutely.
And so that sounds amazing. It'll be interesting. I imagine there's a lot of companies. I know with our financial advisor, I sent him a long list of like, these are the companies I want to make sure are not in any of our investments.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of doing that, but formalizing it into an ETF, and that'll be pretty neat. And boys, do you know what an ETF is?
No. I know ET.
You know ET, phone home guy? Okay. It's a little different. ETF is an exchange-traded fund. It's a conglomeration of a lot of different companies into
That sounds cool.
sort of one fund, right?
So it's like Walmart and
Well, you can think about like Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, like all these companies would go together into one exchange-traded fund, and then it would blend out. So if one company does a little bit bad, one company does good, it kind of balances out, and you have a little bit smoother return. Yeah. Is that fair to say, Priya?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Well, we appreciate what you and the Azoria team are doing, because I think we need more of these alternate investment opportunities.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So that's exciting to hear. Well, with that, we've got a number of questions that we outlined for you.
Alrighty.
So if you're ready for the hard-hitting stuff, we're going to get at it.
Let's do it.
All right.
So, woke capitalism. How do you describe that?
Woke capitalism. I would say that woke capitalism is perfectly described as companies and owners of companies and investors that try and push a political agenda on their consumers. And in turn, so DEI, for example, hiring or excluding to hire people based off of their skin color or their gender, right? Which essentially is wrong in and of itself, but you're not hiring the people that are best qualified for those positions. And I think it's also very insulting to say that people of all colors and creeds aren't capable of achieving things of their own merit, that they need handouts to be able to achieve them.
Right.
But it ends up hurting everybody because performance goes down and people aren't able to hold up to the standard that they were likely hired for if they're not qualified.
Sounds like a superhero-like team.
Yeah.
DEI.
DEI? Yeah, not quite.
It's like the opposite of a superhero.
It's like,
A super villain team.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it is. It's a destructive ideology. Yeah.
And a discriminatory one at that.
Right. I mean, what better way to fight racism than with more racism?
Exactly.
Right?
It's genius.
Yeah.
Genius. Well, that's liberal logic. Okay.
Anyway, do you think a lot of these companies, they have DEI and I think it's like ESG or something in them already, or are they pressured to do it?
You know, I think a lot of them are pressured to do it and have been so over the past 4 years specifically. We've seen a huge spike in DEI hires and quotas in the last year alone. So as much as I think that the culture is going to be shifting away with the new administration, I think we still have a lot of work to do in that aspect.
I actually came out of the corporate world about 25 years in it. And so without calling anything out specifically, I can say that I saw this coming into corporate culture.
Yeah.
And really, I don't want to say destroying corporate culture, but definitely having an impact and a negative one and causing resentment and animosity within an organization.
Absolutely.
And so I do think it can be very dangerous. But yeah, in my humble observation and discussing with, let's say, other people in the corporate world, there is this pressure that they feel.
Absolutely.
And it comes from two sources. It comes externally from maybe vendors, sponsors, customers that have to comply to the same thing. So like if you're servicing a government organization or a municipality or whatever that has these types of DEI or ESG programs, a lot of times they have flow downs within their contracts that you have to comply with.
Yep.
And so I definitely saw some of that. And then internally, you'd see a small contingent of the organization, but a very loud voice that would be pushing. And that's why I think you see companies, changing their logo during the month of June and all of this. And it's not because the majority wants it. It's because there's a really strong minority with a loud voice. Is that what you see as well?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that is actually very representative of how the left has shifted the social climate in the last probably decade. It's always been a very, very small group of people pushing for these drastically radical policies, but they're just the loudest people in the room, right? Like they're just always the ones at the forefront of all the news, and they're in your face constantly, so you can't forget it.
They're very assertive.
Yes.
But it feels a little bit like the pendulum is swinging. You know, you see people like Robbie Starbuck out there calling out some of these organizations, in some ways embarrassing them for their policies, and they're tracking back on them. You've seen Walmart recently and others. So what's your sense of being out more in the mix of this and the work that you do? Are you seeing the wind starting to change a little bit?
We are, and Robbie's actually a good friend of our CEO, James Fishback, and I know that they've talked very highly of each other and what they're trying to do with each of their missions, essentially.
Right.
And as far as Azoria goes, for this ETF specifically, none of these companies, so all the companies that we're going to be excluding, we've identified about 36 of them. Two of the biggest ones that we've publicly named so far, and we will publicly name all of them, have been Starbucks and Best Buy. Yeah. And Starbucks and Best Buy are two beloved American brands, right? I don't know a single American that isn't aware of both of them and probably hasn't shopped at both of them, right? Many times in their life. But the returns on the stock market for these companies specifically have drastically underperformed the S&P itself. Yeah. And essentially, customers see the effects of DEI when they're at the locations, right? If I have to wait 15 minutes for a black cup of coffee, that's ridiculous. Right. I'm sorry. And it's not due to the Wi-Fi or the coffee machine. It's due to the work ethic and the lack of incentivizing good performance with the workplace culture. Right. And I think with DEI especially, you were talking about like the growing amount of animosity that you felt in the workplace the more that these policies were implemented. And I think that's a really, really important thing to point out, because it really casts a shadow over people that might belong to minority communities. And your peers look at you and wonder whether you got to where you are simply because you check off a box of some sort of quota, or if you actually earned it based off of your talent and your performance and your work ethic. I had some minorities that worked for me when I was working, and they said if I got my promotion because of my skin color, I would be offended. And I hope that is not the case. I want to earn what I get. And I really appreciate folks like that. But yes, there is resentment that comes up, because when it's not clear that people are being promoted or being put into their positions because of merit, then it really causes a lot of resentment. And that can be really destructive for a culture of an organization. Kind of like in our business, Max? Like if you're not like pulling your weight, right?
Hey, what?
Come down on you. You know what I'm saying? All right. A good discussion about DEI. We had another topic we wanted to get into.
Oh, you have this platform thing. I forget what it's called. Yeah, it's a fund called the Azoria Meritocracy. Yeah. So, what is it? And are you guys receiving a lot of support with it?
Azoria Meritocracy 500 fund is the ETF that we're planning on launching in March. And like I kind of said, we're essentially accumulating a copycat index, will you, of the S&P 500, but excluding those
Minus
3 dozen.
minus the woke capitalists.
Exactly.
Okay.
The woke capitalist DEI promotion companies.
Do you have more funds planned?
Yeah, we do have more funds planned. None of them are publicly announced yet, but we do
Okay.
have quite a few in the worworks.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
because I imagine there's other angles you could go with that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, especially with the Meritocracy Fund. We're not interested in pushing any sort of political agenda on any of these companies, and especially like our personal politics. But all we want is for these companies to just take the politics out of the equation altogether, right?
Yeah.
Seems reasonable. It seems reasonable. So how does one get on the list of early investors, and I guess like second question would be, how much commitment do you have so far? I don't know how much you can talk about that, but do you have a pretty sizable commitment towards the fund?
We do. Yeah, we just closed a seed round of $25 million.
Oh,
so
that's real money, guys.
That's a lot of money. That's
Yeah.
like a lot of money.
So we've received a lot of really positive support from people on both sides of the aisle, because
Great.
there's no denying the numbers and the performance of a lot of these companies that are, suffering at the hands of these policies. People of both the Democratic and Republican and independent parties all would like to see returns on their investments. None of us
Sure.
want to lose money due to some sort of political agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Once this goes live, can people buy it through their normal broker?
Absolutely.
Or, okay.
Yeah. And the ticker is going to be SMXP.
SMXP.
Is
Okay.
it uppercase or lowercase?
Uppercase.
Oh.
But it doesn't matter.
Doesn't really matter, but SMXP. Okay, I'll keep that on my watch list and look out for it. So very good. Well, okay. So any of our audience, they can look for that and
Absolutely.
check it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we're hoping that people will, switch over from the S&P and switch
Yeah.
over to us, and
Yeah, we need to sort of, what do they say? Like vote with your money, kind of?
Exactly.
How do you
Yeah.
vote with your money? Don't you?
Wait,
sort of-
how is that possible?
It's sort of like not supporting companies that don't support your values and supporting those that do.
oh, that
But it's
makes
not
a
like
lot
an
more
election.
No,
Yeah.
no, not like an election.
So it's like, boys, you know how we don't subscribe to the Disney Channel,
No.
even though they have a couple good movies. Not many anymore.
No,
but
they're
but,
all old now.
But that's an example of like voting with your money. So we don't invest in businesses or companies that we don't think they're like operating with good values. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot more.
And then ultimately, if enough people do that, the
It
company has
punishes
to
them.
change.
Absolutely.
So
And that's what we're hoping is going to happen with these companies, is that they're going to feel the impacts of people deciding to vote with their wallet.
Yeah.
And hoping that kind of helps push these companies to enact that positive change and go back to meritocracy, because overall that's what's better for everyone. It's time tested,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I mean it's a recipe for success if you hire people based off of their skill, ability, and performance, rather than some immutable trait that nobody can control.
right.
Yeah.
I love it. I noticed you have a 1776. What does the
I
necklace
do.
mean to you? Why do you represent that?
I grew up in a very patriotic family. It was
Okay.
instilled in me at a very young age. That's why I love
Oh.
seeing the two of you
Okay.
guys.
I love
and,
it.
Well, all of you guys, what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. And it's really, really uplifting to see so many really young Americans loving this country and
Yeah.
really standing up for its values.
But you're young.
Not me, but you two. You two. Yeah.
Still young. Your dad's young.
At heart, baby.
Your thoughts. Your thoughts.
Yeah, that too. I feel young, but age catches up with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. So
Yeah.
you've just always kind of been a part of a patriotic family.
It was instilled in me in a young age, and and as I've gotten older, my love for this country has grown, and my desire to fight for what's good, beautiful, and true in this country has also grown. So
Yeah. Well, I love that, and we need young patriots in Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We're lighting a
Absolutely.
fire under Gen Alpha. We need to get the pendulum swinging back for the next generations. In a lot of ways, my generation and those before me, we kind of pulled the ladder up behind us, right? We
Yeah.
put in some rough policies, some inflationary policies that are really hurting your generations in terms of
Yeah,
what
Dad,
you
it's
can
all
buy.
it's all
I
your
do not
guys'
get these
fault.
phrases that you're saying, like pulling the ladder back,
Well,
lighting a fire
what it
under
means is-
Kid Alpha.
What it means is our generation took advantage of monetary policy and tried to serve our own best interest to some extent, and that caused a future debt we've saddled your generation with a lot to recoup from. And inflation is probably the most obvious one, just in terms of how much it's going to cost you guys to buy a home and all of that. And probably have 2 people in your household working, and things that weren't necessarily required for me or certainly my parents. But nonetheless, I got another question for you.
Alrighty,
Now, this
alrighty.
one, the boys, this is maybe a little bit more sort of mature side, but I saw you on the Whatever podcast.
Yes.
And so this is not a podcast the boys have seen.
No,
for
it's
obvious
for
reasons.
the better, yeah.
Wait, what?
It's like if you were to go and bathe in a pool of degeneracy, Max. This
You're in a pool of degeneracy.
some of the guests, not Priya, but some of the guests on this show. Anyway, I'll explain it to you.
Diddy?
I'll explain it to you later. Diddy's
not
not a
quite.
guest on the show. It's actually a very interesting show.
It is a very interesting
It highlights a lot of the challenges between men and women and masculinity and femininity and the drive. And I'm making fun a little bit, but
Wait,
it's
what?
actually a really interesting show, and I think some of the takes that you get out of it are really great. So you were on the show,
Yes.
and I just have to know, what was this like?
It's always been really, really interesting. When I initially went on, I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of the show. I had seen clips, and I'm a big Michael Knowles fan, so that's kind of how I found it, was when he did his first appearance on there.
Okay.
And when I went on, I was kind of unprepared. I knew the gist of the show, but I never actually watched it fully through or anything of that sort. And I had the opportunity, and I was like, you know what? I know that I'm not going to misrepresent myself and my values. I'm like confident in that, but at worst, I decide never to do it again, but at best it could be a really good and interesting experience.
Yeah.
And so I went on, I actually thoroughly enjoyed myself and hit it off with the host Brian and the guys that worked for him, and they invited me back on relatively soon after, and I've done about, I think, 11 or 12 appearances.
Have you done that many? Wow.
Yeah, over
Okay.
the last year and a half or so.
What even is this show like?
I'll explain it to you later, but we don't want to take up too much of our time
don't
with
get
Priya
it.
here. Do you find that you are able to spark some thought in the women across the table? How does that work?
So, it's really interesting. It kind of depends on the specific person that I've been talking to, because the college girls per se that, just lean into that type of culture.
Yeah.
They just a lot of the times don't know better, and they think, oh, I'm young, I might as well live it up, have fun.
Yeah.
There's no
Short-sighted
ramifications.
kind of.
Absolutely. And there's been a lot of positive reactions as far as I'm sure what I've said, and plenty of other people on that show as well.
Yeah.
I've been on with some amazing other guests that have been great at communicating that message as well with me. But yeah, a lot of people have been really positively receptive to it, and then others, like the women that are in the adult film industries per se, have either, I find that a lot of the times they have gone through some significant trauma
Yes.
and are horribly damaged by it.
Yeah.
And they truly don't understand the ramifications of what they're doing, whether that be to them or the consumers of these films.
Yeah.
And then you get the other side where these women are actually really intelligent. There was one that I was on with, and she was brilliantly smart, amazing to engage with in conversation. And she knew that, she openly admitted, I know what I'm doing is not conducive to society. If anything, it hurts society, and I know it's not beneficial for me, but I don't care. And it's really interesting seeing people like that. And outside of the conversations about the adult film industry and what they do for work, they seem like really, really genuine people.
Yeah.
Which kind of breaks my heart even more that they've gone down this path. I haven't personally met any of them that really, other than, I do think it's an evil thing to say, I know that what I'm doing is really, really at the detriment of myself and society and all the consumers of these things that I'm doing. They have a moral backbone. They choose to set it aside when it comes to this, whether it be for the money or the attention or whatever it might be. It's really disheartening to see in that aspect, but I have noticed a lot of positive change, not only from that podcast, but those that like it as well, kind of showing young women and young men hey, this is not the way to go about these
there's
things.
a different road you can take.
Exactly.
Right?
And like, this is not conducive to your happiness
Yeah.
or your flourishing in the
So
current or the long term.
Yeah.
Me
That's
too.
okay. It's okay, boys. But yeah, well, hopefully you've inspired some of these young women to think differently, or anybody that's thinking about going into that line of work that is detrimental to their future. Well, anyway, I appreciate you going on and representing
Thank you.
a virtuous side of all of that. And yeah, it's actually sad. We get trolls in our social media thread.
I'm sure,
And I really
yeah.
feel bad for these people. There's a lot of people that have had trauma in their lives, and in some ways they take it out in different ways. Whether it's their line of work or they just take out their anger
Yeah.
on other people. And instead of lashing back at them, we try to understand and we try to be nice, but there's a lot of hurt people out there. And so my heart opens up to them, but at the same time, we can't tolerate it. We can't normalize it. So you
Absolutely.
have to tell people the truth. If it's like obesity or something, it's like, well, sometimes being truthful is the most compassionate thing you can do.
I 100% agree. I don't know, are you guys particularly religious?
Christian.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're more of the people that show up to church on holidays.
Yes.
He's honest.
But I will say, yes, we've all been brought up Christian. We go to typically like holidays. But I would say this experience of starting a podcast, doing this family thing, and having some interesting sort of moral moments, it's actually bringing us closer to God. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And I just feel like the lessons that I've always learned through Christianity, they're starting to come to fruition. And we're doing something that's hard, and we're getting a lot of wind in our face, and we've lost friends, but we're making new ones, like
Right.
yourself and others. And we're finding that our new friends are more aligned. It's really been a rewarding journey that we're on. But I won't bore you with any more of that. It's really important, the work that you're doing, and I've got two
Thank
young
you.
boys,
You
and
guys
so
too.
obviously I want them to grow up in a world where men and women aren't at odds with each other,
Yeah.
that they're looking at each other like a unity and a partnership that they can get together. There's no like one is better than the other. We need each other, and I can say in our relationship with my wife, it's incredible, and she does things I can't do. I do things that she doesn't want to do. Whatever, it works.
It's very interesting to see this whole cultural shift that's happened over the last, probably 50 years or so with the rise of feminism and similar movements, basically saying that the sexes are, there's no distinctions between the two of them, right? They're the same, they're interchangeable, there's no difference between you or I or you and your wife, and, and that you don't need each other.
Yeah.
It's like the reality is we do need each other.
Yes.
And we're very different, but that's not a bad thing. That doesn't make us unequal in
Right.
any way, shape, or form, but we play different roles, and those roles are meant to be complementary to each other, right? To work together it's similar to any sort of workplace. It's a collaborative effort to achieve a goal.
Yes.
And the more people that you're able to incorporate with that, likely the better outcome that you're going to have and the higher the goal that you're going to be able to achieve.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Well, you're an inspiration for a lot of people. I appreciate what you're doing on the
You guys
sort
are
of
an inspiration to me.
social and cultural wars. And I love the work that Azoria is doing. We'll definitely share that more with our audience. So thank you so much, Priya, for coming on the
Thank you for
podcast. We
having
appreciate
me.
your time and everything you're doing.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank
All right.
you. Thank you.